Battle of Badr. The Battle of Badr stands as the first major military engagement between the early Muslims of Medina and the Quraysh tribe of Mecca, fought in March 624 CE near the Wells of Badr, approximately 80 miles southwest of Medina. According to Islamic historical sources, the Muslim forces numbered around 313 men, facing a Quraysh army of roughly 1,000 fighters, creating a massive numerical disadvantage. What began as an intended raid on a Meccan trade caravan escalated into a full-scale battle when the Quraysh army arrived to protect their economic interests. The Muslims, led directly by Prophet Muhammad, positioned themselves strategically near the water wells, controlling this vital resource. The battle itself lasted a single day, with hand-to-hand combat using swords, spears, and bows dominating the fighting. Historical accounts record that approximately 14 Muslims were killed, compared to around 70 Quraysh fighters, with another 70 taken as prisoners. Among the Quraysh dead was their leader Abu Jahl, along with several other prominent Meccan figures. The prisoners were later ransomed, with some exchanged for teaching Muslims to read and write, reflecting the high value placed on literacy. This decisive victory established the Muslims as a credible military force despite their smaller numbers, boosted morale dramatically throughout the community, and dealt a significant psychological blow to Quraysh dominance in the region. The Quran references this battle directly in Surah 8, and it remains one of the most celebrated events in early Islamic history, demonstrating that strategic positioning and determination could overcome superior numbers. Battle of Uhud. The Battle of Uhud occurred in March 625 CE, just 1 year after the Muslim victory at Badr, when the Quraysh tribe launched a revenge campaign against the Muslims near Mount Uhud, located just north of Medina. According to early Islamic sources, approximately 700 Muslim fighters faced a Quraysh force of around 3,000, led by Abu Sufyan, who would later convert to Islam. Prophet Muhammad strategically positioned 50 archers on a hillside with explicit orders to maintain their position regardless of the battle's outcome, creating an initial tactical advantage on the mountain slope. The Muslims began winning decisively, routing the Quraysh forces in the early phases of combat. However, believing victory was assured, many of the archers abandoned their crucial position to collect war spoils from the fleeing enemy, directly disobeying Muhammad's orders. The Quraysh cavalry commander, Khalid ibn Walid, who would later become one of Islam's greatest generals, noticed the abandoned position and launched a devastating counterattack through the gap. The battle turned dramatically, with Muslims suffering approximately 70 casualties, including Hamza, the Prophet's uncle and one of Islam's fiercest warriors. Muhammad himself was injured during the fierce fighting, suffering a broken tooth, facial wounds, and a dented helmet, though he survived. The Quraysh lost around 22 fighters but achieved a tactical victory, though they failed to press their advantage and destroy the Muslim community entirely. This defeat taught crucial lessons about military discipline and the importance of following commands, with the Quran later referencing the battle in Surah 3 as a lesson about obedience, trust, and the consequences of disobedience in critical moments. Battle of the Trench. The Battle of the Trench, also called the Battle of the Confederates, or Al-Khandaq, took place in 627 CE, when a massive coalition of Quraysh and allied Arabian tribes gathered approximately 10,000 fighters to besiege Medina and eliminate the Muslim community once and for all. Facing this overwhelming force, with only about 3,000 defenders, the Muslims adopted an innovative Persian-style defensive strategy suggested by Salman al-Farisi, a companion who had knowledge of foreign warfare tactics. According to historical accounts, the Muslims spent 6 days digging a massive protective trench around the vulnerable northern approaches to Medina, with dimensions reported as approximately 5.5 kilometers long, 4.5 meters deep, and 9 meters wide, though exact measurements vary by source. The entire community participated in this exhausting construction effort, with Muhammad himself working alongside his followers. When the Confederate forces arrived, they found themselves unable to cross this unexpected barrier, turning the conflict into a 2-week standoff rather than the decisive assault they had planned. During the siege, the Banu Qurayza, a Jewish tribe within Medina, broke their neutrality agreement and threatened the Muslims from inside the city, creating additional danger. However, severe weather conditions, including cold winds and heavy rain, demoralized the attacking forces, while Muslim diplomatic efforts successfully sowed discord within the enemy coalition. The siege ended when the Confederates abandoned their campaign, having achieved nothing despite their massive numerical superiority. Casualties were remarkably light on both sides, with only 5 to 6 Muslims and approximately 3 Confederates killed. This marked the last major Quraysh offensive against Medina, and demonstrated that strategic innovation and defensive preparation could neutralize overwhelming force, fundamentally shifting the balance of power in Arabia. Battle of Khaybar. The Battle of Khaybar took place in May to June 628 CE, when Muslim forces launched a military expedition against the Khaybar fortress complex, located approximately 150 kilometers north of Medina, where Jewish tribes allied with Mecca had established a fortified stronghold. According to Islamic historical sources, between 1,400 and 1,800 Muslim fighters besieged the settlement, which housed an estimated defensive force significantly larger in number and protected by multiple fortress compounds, including Naim, Qamus, Wati, and Salalim. Unlike the open battlefield encounters at Badr and Uhud, this campaign required siege warfare tactics against well-fortified positions, surrounded by valuable date palm groves and agricultural land. The siege lasted approximately 1 month, with Muslim forces systematically conquering each fortress through a combination of military pressure and negotiations. Ali ibn Abi Talib, the Prophet's cousin and son-in-law, played a prominent military role, with Islamic tradition recording dramatic accounts of his strength, including lifting a heavy fortress gate. Rather than complete destruction, the conquest ended with negotiated surrender terms that allowed the Jewish residents to remain on their land, farm it, and pay half their harvest as tax to the Muslim community, establishing an important precedent for dealing with non-Muslim populations under Muslim rule. Historical accounts record approximately 15 to 20 Muslim casualties, compared to around 93 defenders killed during the month-long siege. The Muslims captured significant wealth and food supplies, providing an important economic boost to the community. Muhammad married Safiya bint Huyai, daughter of a Khaybar chief who had converted to Islam, further cementing political relationships. This victory eliminated a major threat to Medina's northern flank, demonstrated Muslim capability in siege warfare beyond open battle, secured the northern approaches, and established the jizya system of taxation on non-Muslims, which would become a standard feature of Islamic governance in conquered territories. Conquest of Mecca. The conquest of Mecca represents the culminating campaign of Muhammad's military career, occurring in January 630 CE during the Islamic month of Ramadan, when Muslim forces marched on Muhammad's birthplace after the Quraysh violated the Treaty of Hudaybiyah by attacking Muslim allies. According to historical accounts, Muhammad assembled approximately 10,000 fighters, the largest Muslim force yet gathered, and divided them into 4 columns approaching Mecca simultaneously from the north, south, east, and west directions. Before the conquest, Abu Sufyan, the longtime Quraysh leader and former commander at Uhud, converted to Islam and helped negotiate Mecca's largely peaceful surrender. Most of the city submitted without fighting, though limited skirmishes occurred at the southern entrance led by Khalid ibn Walid. Total casualties were remarkably low, with sources reporting approximately 28 deaths total, just 12 Muslims and 16 Meccans, making this one of the most bloodless conquests of a major city in ancient warfare. Muhammad granted a general amnesty to the Meccan population, famously declaring that people were free and forgiven, with only about 10 individuals initially marked for execution, most of whom were later pardoned. Upon entering the city, Muhammad personally destroyed the 360 idols that surrounded the Kaaba, the cubic structure that would become Islam's holiest site, and the direction Muslims face during prayer. He delivered a sermon emphasizing equality among all people, regardless of race or tribal affiliation, and the importance of forgiveness over revenge. This conquest established Islam as the dominant force throughout the Arabian Peninsula, triggered mass conversions, including many former enemies and key tribal leaders, and transformed Mecca into the central pilgrimage destination for Muslims worldwide, fundamentally reshaping Arabian politics and religion. Battle of Hunain. The Battle of Hunain occurred shortly after the conquest of Mecca in January to February 630 CE, when the Hawazin and Thaqif tribes, feeling threatened by rapidly expanding Muslim power, assembled a force estimated between 20,000 and 30,000 warriors to confront the Muslims before they could consolidate control. The Muslim army now swelled to approximately 12,000 fighters, including many newly converted Meccans whose loyalty was untested, marched toward the Hunain Valley located between Mecca and Ta'if. According to Islamic sources, the Muslims had grown overconfident after their easy victory at Mecca, with some reportedly saying that they could not be defeated with such numbers. The Hawazin leader, Malik ibn Auf, positioned archers on the heights of the narrow Hunain Valley and executed a devastating ambush as the Muslim vanguard entered the confined space. The initial Muslim forces panicked and fled in chaos, leaving Muhammad with only a small group of steadfast companions. His uncle Abbas, known for having an exceptionally loud voice, called out to the fleeing Muslims to return and regroup around the Prophet. Once reorganized, the Muslims launched a fierce counterattack that routed the enemy forces decisively. The Muslims captured approximately 6,000 prisoners, 24,000 camels, and 40,000 sheep and goats, though exact numbers vary by source. Muhammad distributed these spoils generously, particularly to the new Meccan converts, to strengthen their commitment to Islam. The Quran references this battle in Surah 9, verses 25 to 26, noting how the Muslims' numerical superiority and pride led to initial defeat before divine assistance and renewed unity brought victory, teaching an important lesson about the dangers of overconfidence and the necessity of maintaining discipline and faith regardless of apparent advantages. Siege of Ta'if. The Siege of Ta'if followed immediately after the Battle of Hunain in January to February 630 CE, when Muslim forces pursued the fleeing Hawazin and Thaqif tribes to the fortified city of Ta'if, located approximately 100 kilometers southeast of Mecca in the mountainous Hijaz region. This marked the first time Muslims employed advanced siege equipment, including catapults, called manjanik in Arabic, and mobile protective shelters known as dababa, demonstrating the evolution of Muslim military capabilities beyond open battlefield tactics. According to historical accounts, approximately 12,000 Muslim fighters surrounded the well-fortified city, which had strong defensive walls and ample provisions stored for a prolonged siege. The defenders of Ta'if proved skilled and resourceful, using heated iron bars that they dropped onto the Muslim siege equipment, destroying or damaging the wooden structures, and their archers inflicted casualties on the besieging forces from their elevated positions on the walls. Muslims attempted various tactics, including cutting down Ta'if's famous grape vineyards to pressure the inhabitants into surrender, and Muhammad offered freedom to any slaves who escaped the city, with 23 reportedly taking this opportunity and joining the Muslim side. The siege lasted between 10 and 40 days, according to different historical sources, but ultimately proved unsuccessful in forcing Ta'if's surrender. After consulting with his commanders and recognizing the mounting casualties, estimated at around 12 Muslims killed during assault attempts, Muhammad made the strategic decision to lift the siege and withdraw, reportedly stating they would leave Ta'if's fate to Allah. This demonstrated pragmatic military decision-making and willingness to accept that not every objective could be achieved through force. Approximately 2 months after the siege ended, a delegation from Ta'if voluntarily came to Medina and peacefully accepted Islam, achieving through patience what military force could not accomplish. Battle of Tabuk. The Battle of Tabuk, which occurred in October 630 CE during the 9th year after the Hijra, represents the most distant military expedition personally led by Muhammad, and notably resulted in no actual combat, making it unique among the campaigns discussed. According to Islamic historical sources, Muhammad mobilized approximately 30,000 fighters, the largest Muslim force ever assembled during his lifetime, to march roughly 700 kilometers north to Tabuk, near the Byzantine-Syria border, in response to reports that Byzantine forces were gathering for an attack on Muslim territory. The expedition took place during intensely hot weather and coincided with the date harvest season, making participation economically costly for those who left their crops. Yet the massive turnout demonstrated the strength of Muslim commitment. The journey through harsh desert terrain took approximately 20 days, with severe water shortages testing the endurance of the entire force, and many Muslims who wanted to participate were unable to afford the necessary equipment and provisions for such a distant campaign. Upon reaching Tabuk, the Muslims remained for approximately 20 days, but no Byzantine army materialized, either because the threat never existed, the Byzantines withdrew upon learning of the Muslim approach, or intelligence reports had been exaggerated. Rather than engaging in battle, Muhammad used this show of force for diplomatic purposes, negotiating peace treaties with various Christian and Jewish communities throughout the region, establishing tributary relationships where local populations paid jizya taxation in exchange for Muslim protection and autonomy. The expedition successfully extended Muslim influence to the Syrian borders, demonstrated the capability to project military power across vast distances, created a buffer zone against potential Byzantine expansion, and established precedents for the rapid Muslim conquests into Byzantine territory that would occur after Muhammad's death, all without losing a single fighter to combat. Expedition to Mu'tah. The expedition to Mu'tah stands out as unique among Muhammad's military campaigns because he did not personally participate, instead appointing commanders to lead approximately 3,000 Muslim fighters against Byzantine and allied Arab Christian forces at Mu'tah in modern-day Jordan in September 629 CE. According to Islamic tradition, this expedition was triggered by the Byzantine-aligned Ghassanid governor's killing of a Muslim messenger, which constituted a severe diplomatic violation that demanded response, marking the first major confrontation between Muslims and the Byzantine Empire, one of the era's superpowers. Muhammad appointed 3 commanders in succession to lead if the previous fell. First Zayd ibn Haritha, his adopted son, then Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, his cousin, and finally Abdullah ibn Rawaha, and remarkably all 3 were killed during the fierce fighting. Historical sources claim the Muslims faced overwhelmingly superior numbers, with enemy forces estimated between 100,000 and 200,000, though these figures are almost certainly exaggerated by early chroniclers and should be understood as indicating vastly superior forces rather than precise counts. When all 3 appointed commanders had fallen, Khalid ibn Walid, a recent convert who had fought against Muslims at Uhud, assumed command on the battlefield and executed a brilliant tactical withdrawal that saved the army from complete annihilation. Historical accounts record approximately 12 to 13 Muslim casualties, including the 3 commanders, while enemy losses remain unknown but were significant enough that the Byzantines did not pursue the retreating Muslim force. Islamic tradition describes Khalid breaking 9 swords during the intense fighting, and upon the army's return to Medina, Muhammad gave him the title Saif Allah, meaning Sword of Allah, recognizing his tactical genius in preserving the Muslim force against impossible odds. This expedition established Muslims as a regional power capable of challenging major empires, set the stage for future Muslim-Byzantine conflicts, and revealed Khalid as perhaps history's greatest military commander, who would lead the conquests of both the Byzantine and Persian empires in the years following Muhammad's death. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.